new emerging studies are proving definitively that the human body does not need gigantic amounts of protein to be optimally fit and healthy. And in fact, there are some pretty significant detriments to eating high protein. But we've all been propagandized with this myth that the human body requires huge amounts of animal flesh every day or else you're going to wither away. And in my opinion, it's nothing but a negatively polarized thought form used to hypnotize the masses into flesh consumption as the optimal way of living, as if God created a universe where the human cannot be healthy without the widespread genocide and murder of animals. We are both healthier and fitter now than we've ever been before in our mid-30s. We have received tons of questions, James, from men asking us to help them sort of assuage their fears that dropping protein intake will not make them any less strong or muscular. And so today we're going to bust the protein myth once and for all.
Aaron, what do you think it signals to God? I am willing to kill as many animals so I could get a little bit more muscle. And I never thought about it that way when I was eating meat and working out, but that's basically what I was doing. I used to believe that if I didn't get a meal of meat in within an hour of training, that I would wither away. And it kind of takes a leap of faith, like, hey, I'm gonna lower my protein and see what happens. If your goal is to live a long, healthy, vibrant, positive life, if you can take that leap of faith, I believe you will be rewarded.
Shalom Alechem, peace be with you, and welcome back, my friends, to the Jesus Way podcast. Today, we're excited to talk a little bit more about the hot topic of the month. Not Paul, but the Jesus diet. We've done, 4 some odd episodes now on the Jesus diet, and we keep getting questions rolling in. And so we're going to answer one of the most important questions we've been getting, which is all about this protein topic, which has been a big topic in the fitness world for a long time now. And we're going to debunk some serious protein myths today, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I think just another way to validate the Jesus diet as the ultimate and optimal human diet, as we've been saying. And speaking of fitness and nutrition, James, you're looking like you're ready to hit the gym today, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I sure am ready. We're going after this podcast, aren't we?
Indeed we are. It's squat day, man. Got to hit those squats.
Oh boy, fun stuff. By the way, your beard and haircut is looking especially on fleek today. I don't know if you noticed in your comments section on Instagram, some Pauline Christian said that you had a demonic haircut.
Somebody sent that to me and I just went, wow. In terms of ad hominem attacks, like that's got to be top level, you know? When you run out of arguments, what else can you say? Your haircut's demonic. It's like, thank you, sir. Checkmate.
Bro, this is why I'm 5 steps ahead. I just buzz my head so I can't be accused of having a demonic haircut. It's checkers, not chess. Oh wait, chess, not checkers.
Other way, yeah. Paul, not Jesus, or something like that. I mean, hey, if you want to make sure you don't get ad hominemed by Christians, just shave your head and be bald like Paul. You know, you're in the safe zone.
I'm just emulating the master.
Ooh, watch out for those lightning bolts. But in any case, as we said, the Jesus diet has been a smash hit among our followers and listeners for very good reason. And the Jesus 40 challenge is in full swing at the moment. And we've been absolutely loving your guys' testimonials and feedback, not just that come in from our YouTube comments, but from the Jesus Way Circle in Ford University. And you guys are taking this challenge really seriously. And we are very much looking forward to seeing some of your transformations next month at the end of the challenge. So in order to keep the momentum going, we wanted to do a quick podcast today, reacting to some amazing new studies on protein consumption, which we think definitively prove what we've been saying, that the Jesus diet really is the optimal human diet, according to the way that our Creator designed our bodies to function. And so let me say this. The fitness and health industry or space over the last 20 years or so has been absolutely obsessed with high protein as the pinnacle of a healthy diet. First advice you're going to get from most nutritionists of how should I eat a healthy diet? They'll say, well, you definitely got to get a lot of protein, right? And yet cancer rates, disease, hormonal decline, human aging have all worsened significantly over these last 20 years, even though everyone's eating their 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And so, of course, America's health crisis can't be blamed on any one thing alone. But we do think that this obsession with high protein and animal flesh consumption has definitely contributed greatly to the decline of health in America. And we're going to show you why we believe this today based on some new studies that have recently emerged on protein intake. In order to meet these ridiculously high protein numbers, James, which everyone recommends and are touted as being healthy, you basically have to eat flesh all day long. And many famous fitness influencers who promote this way of eating love to make videos showing you, a day in the life of how I eat every day to hit my 250 grams of protein. And it's always the same, right? It's eggs and bacon for breakfast, 2 chicken breasts with rice for lunch, protein shake after the gym, and a big fat ribeye for dinner. It's like you're just consuming protein in flesh all day long. And as we've been discussing over our previous 3 or 4 Jesus Diet episodes, there's some serious health consequences to doing that. If you are cramming protein into your body all day long, you are blunting all of the longevity hormones in your body, like AMPK, FGF21, and GDF15, which slow down your biological aging, your cellular turnover, give you way more energy and youthfulness, and help you burn body fat while preserving muscle mass. These are all very good things that we don't want to blunt. And so the question or concern for most people is, but how can I have all of that and not lose all my muscle mass? And we've been trying to dispel this myth on some of our previous episodes. So one of the things we've been talking about, James, is that when you eat huge amounts of protein, you are flooding your body with far too many building blocks, as we say, than it can possibly use in one day. And so most of it has to get eliminated through your kidneys and urinary system, which also takes a lot of energy for the body, notwithstanding the enormous amount of energy that you lose from digestion when you eat so much meat and protein all day. So as we've said, animal flesh is the most energy expensive food for the human body to digest. And although protein is 5 calories less per gram than fat is, it has a far higher thermic effect in digestion. The thermic effect of fat is between 0 to 3% of its calories. Carbs are between 5 to 10%, and protein is a whopping 25 to 30% of its calories. So in other words, for every 100 calories of steak protein you eat, only about 70 calories of those are going to be usable for digestion. Whereas with fruit, carbohydrates, 95 of those calories are usable after digestion. So this is why people who eat high amounts of animal flesh and protein generally age much faster. This is why everybody jokes that the carnivore diet will turn you into a really fit grandpa, because it does. You're eating the flesh of dead animals, and death can only produce death. You're going to age faster. When you require your body to spend enormous quantities of energy every day digesting meat and protein all day, you are obviously going to have less energy left over for youthfulness and skin health and cellular regeneration and all the things that lead to a long, healthy lifespan. So that's why the Jesus diet flips the script on this conventional thinking and says, no, let's bring our protein down as low as possible within the healthy range, and let's pump our bodies full of the life-giving energy and prana in fruit and carbohydrates, filled with light codes from the sun, and plant-based sugar that fills our cells with ATP. And as I've said before, whether you agree or disagree on the spiritual ethics of animal murder and flesh consumption, you don't even need that to want to avoid eating flesh. Here's all you need to know of why flesh consumption is not in your best interest. Because animal flesh is, again, the single most energy expensive food and high thermic food for the body to digest. So the more flesh you eat, the faster you're going to age, and the more youthfulness you're going to lose. But we don't want you to just take our word for it, because we're going to show you today a host of new studies on protein intake that prove this definitively. We do not need giant quantities of protein to be fit and strong and healthy. We already showed you guys all of our blood lab results, our physiques, and our body composition numbers after 2 years on the Jesus diet. We are both healthier and fitter now than we've ever been before in our mid-30s. And yet still, so many people, mostly men in particular, are still rightfully so, kind of programmed by the high protein propaganda myth that we've all been fed. That if you don't eat at least 200 grams of protein per day, all your muscles will just shrivel away. We have received tons of questions, James, from men asking us to help them sort of assuage their fears that dropping protein intake will not make them any less strong or muscular. And so today we're going to bust the protein myth once and for all and show you why it is in your best interest to eat a low fat, low to moderate protein, high carbohydrate diet. We also released our Jesus Way Axioms episode a few weeks ago, James. And the 9th axiom is the body is a temple. These 10 axioms are the rules we live by and how we truly embody the Jesus Way philosophy in our life. And so we believe strongly that a healthy body is absolutely essential for spiritual growth. Physical health is where we begin in this life. It is the root system that grounds us into physical reality, gives us strength and longevity and endurance for this life. And so if we're sick, lethargic, diseased, we cannot be of much use to anybody, let alone ourselves. And as we know and talk about a lot here, Jesus himself emerged from this Essene type of Judaism, which all of our first century historians say were remarkably healthy and lived remarkably long lives, averaging over 100 years old, they say. And even Jesus' brother Simeon, who succeeded him as the leader of the Nazarene church, was documented to be 120 years old when he was martyred by Rome, according to our historical data. So for all these reasons and more, we believe that physical health was very important to Jesus and the first Nazarene Christians. So that's why we emphasize, and will continue to emphasize, that robust physical health and a diet that aligns with the golden rule which Jesus taught is an essential pillar of being a true disciple of Yeshua and living the Jesus way. So with that being said, James, I'll step down from my soapbox and throw it over to you. Where do you want to kick us off today in this conversation?
Well, there's so many different things we could touch on, but I truly believe that gluttony is one of the most overlooked sins. And sin is such a loaded term, but something
Definitely
that
in America.
leads, yeah, in America, it leads people away from truth and a deeper connection with God. And it's kind of been normalized, especially in the church. And when we're talking about having lower to moderate protein levels, it really relates to gluttony and self control. Even for the people that are firm believers in the health benefits of eating meat, does that mean we should gluttonously pig out on meat 3 times a day? Is that really serving our best interests? And as we'll see in the data, eating that much animal protein or even that much protein in general can have negative effects. Now, I own a company that sells protein powder. I could easily go up here and say, you need as much protein as possible. But it's just not true from my personal
Yeah.
experience. You really don't need any supplements, to be honest with you. Maybe B12 on a vegetarian diet, but you don't need supplements. Supplements can help you if you already have other things dialed in. But really, it's these fundamentals, these basics, these nutrition axioms, if you will. Once you have those in place, everything else can fall into place. And now, the other thing I want to say is that I've unfortunately had to learn about this due to my mom's health issues. My mom had cancer. She had a stem cell transplant and miraculously survived, but she has late stage kidney disease. And learning about kidney disease, I've found that animal protein is the absolute worst thing for your kidney health. And
Yeah.
a lot of kidney disease stems from an overconsumption of animal protein. And I dug into all these studies for my mom. People are so much more likely to go on dialysis if they have kidney disease and they're eating animal protein. If they give up the animal protein, their their odds of going on dialysis are greatly reduced. And this flows over to just general health for our everyday life. The kidney is so important for purifying the blood. And when we overload it with animal
Yeah.
protein, it really ages and deteriorates faster. And this is interesting because the kidney is symbolic. There's actually a bunch of quotes in the Old Testament about the kidney being a spiritual organ, uh, even more so than a physical organ that involves ciphering truth from fiction, truth from falsity, right? So I truly believe there's a spiritual component to this, that when we're eating massive amounts of animal protein, it really distorts our spiritual perception. So gluttony, temperance, all of these concepts, while they are important for physical health, I believe they're just as important for our spiritual well-being and connection.
Yeah, there's something profoundly powerful about eating the flesh of a dead animal that forces you subconsciously in your psyche to disconnect from animals in some way, because you have to always rationalize your actions. The human mind always has to rationalize its actions. And so you have to feel less connected to animals in order to eat flesh. And I'm sure that flesh eating people listening would disagree and say, oh, no, I still feel connected to animals. And to that, I would say, maybe you think you feel some connection to animals. I'm not saying you don't, but I promise you that you don't understand how deeply connected you will feel to animals when you give up flesh consumption. It's a night and day difference. And I want to give a huge shout out actually to one of our 40U team members, Jaslyn, who recently watched Christspiracy with her husband Yusuf, and they were totally impacted by the message of, wow, I haven't seen this blind spot before, but this is undeniably true, that when I eat flesh, I'm participating in the mass suffering, torture, and murder of animals, genocide of animals, that it cannot possibly be in consonance with the Jesus way. And so for her 30th birthday, I think last week, her and her husband Yusuf went to a farm to pet cows for her birthday. And she said, what I wanted to do as I enter the next decade of my life to christen this new harm-free way of living is to go and love and care for these animals that I've been basically abusing and marginalizing my whole life without realizing it. And it's like, she's got tears in her eyes while she's petting this beautiful cow. And it's like, I got tears in my eyes reading her post, because it's such a beautiful testament to the way your heart can be cracked open to the oneness and the connection you have with all life, and that the indwelling spirit of God fills the cow, the pig, the goat, the chicken, the bird in the sky, just as much as it fills every human being. And when you see that, you cannot unsee it. And I promise you, you'll never feel as connected to life as you will when you make this inner shift, right? But today we're not even talking about that. We're just approaching this from a nutritional aspect and a biological aspect, because a lot of meat eaters will say, to your point, James, of like, I love eating meat because it's so nutrient dense. And that's one of the rationalizations for, I have to eat meat because it's the most nutrient dense food. And to that, I would say, I'm not concerned with the most nutrient dense food. It's like if you could pack 300 grams of protein into a tiny block, it doesn't matter, right? Your body can't use all of that. And so it needs to spend a lot of energy breaking it down and getting it out of the body, out of the bloodstream. I'm not interested in the most nutrient dense possible food I can find. Like you could argue that, your mother's flesh is super nutrient dense. Why don't you eat your mom? That's not a good rational argument or justification. I'm interested in the most bioavailable and digestion friendly foods for all the reasons we've aforementioned here. I used to get my bloods taken when I was on the ketogenic diet, and I still think the ketogenic diet is a great tool to have in your tool belt if you want to do a certain type of bodily cleansing. I think ketogenic diet can be great for that, but it is a survival diet, not a diet for longevity or thriving, in my opinion. And I used to do it for, a year plus straight and had a lot of problems, ran into a lot of problems. And one of them was that my blood was very thick when I would get my blood labs back, because I was eating so much protein, like 200 plus grams a day. And so if this is the fruit, right? A tree by its fruit, as Jesus said. If eating a lot of protein turns your blood into sludge, and you're trying to pump all this thick blood through your bloodstream, which then increases your blood pressure and hypertension and cholesterol issues, and it all flows downstream towards coronary heart disease and things like this, that's not a good fruit, right? If eating high protein was truly that good for us, then it wouldn't have all these detrimental effects on our blood. So what we want to show you guys today is that new emerging studies are proving definitively that the human body does not need gigantic amounts of protein to be optimally fit and healthy. And in fact, there are some pretty significant detriments to eating high protein. And so we want to show you this as another way to give you permission to lower your protein, to feel safe to lower your protein, because we've all been propagandized. James and I included, absolutely. This was not an easy one to switch from, right? But we've all been propagandized with this myth that the human body requires huge amounts of animal flesh every day, or else you're going to wither away. And in my opinion, it's nothing but a negatively polarized thought form used to hypnotize the masses into flesh consumption as the optimal way of living, as if God created a universe where the human cannot be healthy without the widespread genocide and murder of animals. God designed our bodies to thrive without having to do harm to living creatures. When we eat fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, we don't need to kill any sentient beings to do so. And the macronutrient ratios we get from plant-based foods are always lower in protein and fat and high in carbohydrates. That's why nature created them that way, because that's what's optimal for the human being. So what we're going to show you guys is a video from a health fitness influencer named Jeremy Ethier, who has a really big channel and makes some really great content about fitness. And he recently did a video breaking down these new studies on the protein myth that we thought was really exceptional. And we want to show you guys this video today, and we're just going to kind of react to the different points he brings up as we go along.
Bigger and bigger by shoveling high protein into your body. But what if eating more protein isn't just unnecessary, but actually makes it harder to grow? Today, I'll walk you through the new research that challenges everything we thought we knew and reveal the two things that actually build more muscle than protein. But how did protein become known as the most important nutrient in the first place?
I mean, there was some diets, I'm not going to lie, I ate 140 egg whites a day.
People think it's crazy that I've eaten 200 grams of protein for almost 20 straight years.
When you lift weights, you trigger muscle protein synthesis, a molecular message to your muscles that says build. But building muscle is just like building a brick house. Without bricks, nothing gets built. Protein is those bricks. Eat enough of it, and you've got the raw materials to actually turn that growth signal into new muscle. But when gym bros learned this, they didn't just want to build houses. They wanted mansions. Back in the golden era, it wasn't uncommon for bodybuilders to eat over 300 grams of protein per day, a dozen eggs in one sitting, and pounds of chicken breast. Fast forward to today, and you'll still find lifters chasing 200 plus grams of protein per day, or following the 1 gram per pound of body weight rule like it's gospel.
So I want to pause here really quick because, he's showing Jay Cutler talking about bodybuilding. And this is a point we've made before, right, James, that I don't personally know any carnivores. I have a few friends and people I've known that are like on the carnivore diet that aren't on steroids or testosterone replacement therapy. And it's understandable, right, how these trends happen in the fitness world, and people, it kind of catches fire on social media where it's like, hey, bro, here's how you get optimally healthy and look amazing. Got to eat tons of protein, get on that TRT, bro, optimize that testosterone. And every guy's like, oh, this sounds great. And so they just kind of do what the Paul Saladinos of the world and whoever else are doing, right? And so it's no fault of anyone that they catch onto a trend and try it out. Try out anything you want. But what we've seen is that if you're going to say that you have to eat all this protein, but you're on steroids and someone else is not, that's something you should address, right? That maybe someone who's on anabolic performance enhancing drugs can use a little bit more of that protein to build muscle than a natural person. And so maybe they don't need to eat as much protein as a bodybuilder. But somehow, as he said there, from the golden era of bodybuilding forward, like everyone started looking to bodybuilders as the pinnacle of fitness and health. And so if Arnold Schwarzenegger eats 250 grams of protein, I want to look like him, I got to eat that. But it's like, hey, brother, your body can't use anywhere near as much protein as Arnold Schwarzenegger's can because he's on a ton of steroids. And that's just something that's never talked about, James. And I think that it should be talked about, at least if the people in that space want to be more honest about why they eat so much protein. And I'm not saying every carnivore is on steroids or TRT. I'm just saying I've never met one that isn't, because it's kind of part of the culture. So I think far more people who follow that lifestyle probably take testosterone therapy in some way, which again, to me, defeats the purpose of their argument. You're saying that this is the optimally healthy way to eat, and yet you need to take testosterone injections? James and I don't, and we eat way less protein than you do. So why, again, do I need to flood my body with tons of protein every day?
Right. And we have different goals. We want to look good, of course. But our most important goal is to be vibrant, to have energy, and to live a long time and flourish and be able to spread this message for many years. If your goal is to get as big as possible and to sacrifice your health down the road, then maybe carnivore and steroids is for you. But if your goal is to live a long, healthy, vibrant, positive life, then I believe this lifestyle that we are promoting is most appropriate. And Aaron's right. Nearly every carnivore or animal-based influencer I personally know is on steroids. I know a few who aren't, but the majority are, and it is part of the culture. But if the diet you're promoting is so healthy, why do you need steroids? Why do you need to compensate with an exogenous hormones? It's really interesting. And we're also seeing a lot of carnivore influencers getting very sick. I mean,
Yeah, that's
unfortunately
true.
I've heard Jordan Peterson is dying basically. He's extremely
Yeah.
ill. There's a few others. Liver King is in rough shape. We
Oof.
won't get into the details there, but there's some
Chris
really
Williamson.
Chris Williamson. There's a lot. There's a lot. And I pray for them and I hope they'll recognize that perhaps their diet is playing into this because they're blaming everything else except the diet because it's gospel for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it takes a real working understanding of the first principles of not just how your body works, but how everything in the universe works. Everything in the universe is built on balance because the law is one. So if there's a push, there's a pull, right? So being optimally healthy is all about finding the perfect possible balance between the two sides. And we talk about AMPK and mTOR, right? How, hey, we're not trying to just be an mTOR all day long like bodybuilders so we can get as big as possible. And we're not trying to just be an AMPK all day long so we can look like the longevity influencers. We want a good mix of both. We want to push that AMPK button all through the day. As it gets to evening, we want to push that mTOR button to rest and digest. And so if you're trying to, as bodybuilders do, for example, put on as much lean body mass as humanly possible, then you're trying to push your body towards an extreme, right? Which means there's going to be a pull somewhere else. And as we know that unfortunately, bodybuilders tend to have very short lifespans. There's many bodybuilders we could name who die these really tragic young deaths. Rich Piana, for example. They're almost always from heart attacks because of all the protein and steroids just wears down their system. And if you're going to be pushing your body to hold as much muscle mass as possible, your body can do that because it's amazing. But it's going to come at the cost of something equal on the other end, which is your lifespan, right? So yeah, you can have big, huge muscles for a short amount of time. That's kind of how it works. So what we're interested in is keeping the most lean body mass we can keep because lean body mass is very healthy for you, like very, very healthy. But we want to keep as much on as we can naturally without performance enhancing drugs, without stuffing giant amounts of protein in our body. Doing it the way God intended is always going to be the optimal way. What is natural is what is most healthy. And so again, there's nothing in nature that says that God designed our bodies to naturally need hundreds of grams of protein a day just to be optimally healthy.
Aaron, what do you think it signals to God when you're basically with your lifestyle? What you're saying is that I am willing to kill as many animals as possible so I could get a little bit more muscle. What?
Yeah.
And I never thought about it that way when I was eating meat and working out, but that's basically what I was doing. I don't care how much suffering and destruction and violence my actions cause if my biceps look a little bigger. It's vanity, it's selfish, and I'm sorry, but it's true. It's
Yeah.
how is that principle wise, how is that different from someone who's willing to screw other people over to get an advantage in some area of life? You're willing to inflict suffering for a personal gain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is, we don't see these things, obviously. They're very subtle, but the more spiritually aware you become, the more you see it, right? That to say that my deltoids are more important than a cow's life is obviously service to self and inherently negative. And so we just want to, if we're walking the Jesus way, to choose the way of life in every way possible. Whatever brings life, whatever brings health, happiness, and wholeness, that's the path I want to choose. And if my biceps have to be a little bit smaller, that's fine with me. I care more about following the Jesus way and living according to the golden rule.
Amen.
But you don't have to have small biceps, and that's the good news. All right, let's get back to the video.
I know
here.
I did. I used to believe that if I didn't hit my daily protein target, I was leaving tons of gains on the table. But it wasn't just bodybuilders. The food industry realized that they could cash in on this obsession. Suddenly, you've got protein cereal, protein chips, protein cookies, even Starbucks lattes with extra protein. Most of it is just cheap protein sprinkled in, but because they can slap high protein on the label, they charge you 20% more, and people will happily pay for it. But here is where things get really interesting. Recently, a group of top protein researchers were curious about just how much extra muscle you build by eating more protein. So they got together and they gathered every long-term growth study they could find, 62 in total, where participants lifted weights but ate different amounts of protein. Then they plotted all those results on a graph. Protein intake on the bottom, muscle growth on the side.
So I just want to stress here, this is from 62 different studies. So this isn't just one cherry-picked study. This is an amalgamation of 62 different studies, and we're going to see here what the results are.
The results were not what they were expecting. In one study, participants ate what most lifters would call low protein, so 0.45 grams per pound of body weight. For someone who weighs 180 pounds, that's just 82 grams of protein a day. Basically,
so that's right within the Jesus diet protein range that we teach. Let's see what happens in this study.
2 chicken breasts. This mark on the y-axis represents how much growth they got. Now, what happens if you take a similar group of lifters, but you feed them double that? 4 chicken breasts per day. Using gym bro math, that should mean at least double the gains, right? Surprisingly, the growth was pretty much identical. But now let's really push it. 270 grams per day. That's 6 chicken breasts. Well,
okay, so the low protein group at about 84 grams a day gained the same amount of muscle as 164 grams of protein a day. That right there should give us pause, right, to question this idea, this protein myth. But let's see what happens here when he compares a super high, like fitness influencer level high, 200 plus grams of protein. Let's see what happens here.
Well, despite participants in this study eating 3 times more protein, they actually gained less muscle. But I know what you're thinking. Jeremy, you can't just cherry pick studies and call it a day. And you're right. So let's widen the lens a bit. Here are all the studies in the analysis that looked at moderate to high protein.
So that was one study that he just went over. Low protein group, moderately high protein group, and super high protein group. This is the results from one study, which is pretty remarkable, right? I mean, if it's a biological fact that eating more protein equals more muscle mass, then you would imagine that this could never possibly be lower than the previous 2. But now he's going to compare the other 62 studies and plot them here, and you'll see that the trend is the same across these other studies.
With just 2 outliers removed because they reported way larger than normal gains. Now, if eating more protein really has a powerful effect on growth, you'd expect these dots to climb up and to the right.
The trend is basically flat. And so what that means is the anticipated benefit of pushing your protein even higher is very, very small. And frankly, so small that many researchers aren't even confident that a benefit exists at all.
Whoa, that's a huge statement, dude. Many researchers are not even confident that a benefit exists at all. So it's like not only is this protein myth not as accurate as we've thought, they're now saying based on the research that there may not even be a benefit at all, meaning calorie intake, as he's going to show you here, might actually be the golden elixir everyone was looking for with protein, that, hey, you really just need to meet your caloric needs every day, and your body can use those calories to build muscle, whether they come from protein, fat, or carbs.
That's Dr. Eric Trexler, a published researcher at Duke University who spent his career studying muscle growth.
If you're building a house and you have more bricks than the blueprint calls for, that doesn't mean you end up with a bigger house. Basically, you just end up with a bunch of leftover bricks, and eventually you're going to have to haul them away from the construction site. So when you're building a house, that's tedious. It's a waste of time.
But graphs are one thing.
So that was a good example, right, of what we said earlier, that just because you eat all that protein by no means you can use it all. But if somebody's on TRT or anabolic steroids, then they're going to have more builders to use more blocks with, hence why they can build more muscle. But the muscle that they build always ends up looking unnatural, right? Because the human body doesn't want to have that much muscle mass because it's not optimally healthy to have that level of muscle mass. It creates a lot of stiffness in the body and calcification. And of course, to eat that much protein is going to turn your blood more thick and these kinds of things. So even the bodybuilders that can use more of those protein building blocks are still having it come at a huge cost to their digestion, their energy expenditure, and their kidneys and their blood thickness and all these kinds of things. So there's no free meals in nature, as we say.
Say you somehow managed to convince a pro bodybuilder to not just cut his protein intake in half, but to stop eating meat, eggs, and fish, getting all of his protein only from plant-based sources. Surely he would shrivel up and lose all his gains, right? Well, that's exactly what pro-natural bodybuilder Alex Leonidas did 2.5 years ago. Alex used to eat 200 grams of protein every single day. Now he eats as low as 90 grams per day, and all of it comes from plant-based sources.
I've noticed absolutely nothing. Recovery is exactly the same. Progressive overload is the same as it's been for many years. I would consider myself an elite natural lifter. I've been documenting all my training since 2020. I have SD cards filled to the max. My gains have not been affected whatsoever. I've tried up to 220 grams, including being at single-digit body fat. Comparing that to 120, which is 100 grams less, I'm just as strong as I've ever been. 405 bench at 181.
So if you're wondering how far a person can possibly get with a low protein diet, Alex is living proof that the answer is pretty damn far.
I just feel like people need to focus more on their health instead of just one sole macronutrient, protein. And I'm not the first person to report this. I don't know if you've looked at Brian Bornstein and a couple other guys, but it's a common thing that they're now dropping their levels to around the zone that I'm talking about. And that's been surprising to me too, because now I'm saving money and I don't have to stress about it as much.
But now you're
Sounds like he's preaching the Jesus diet here, bro. And this is all the stuff we've said in our videos so far. And keep in mind, again, that guy not only was eating a lower protein diet, about 120 grams, but he's eating it all from plant-based protein. And from his testimony, he said himself, I've noticed absolutely nothing, no changes, no loss of strength, muscle size, anything at all. So it's pretty paradigm shattering, to say the least, right?
It is. And this is what Aaron and I have experienced. We've gotten stronger and fitter, but we totally understand the fear, especially for men who work out, about losing muscle. I mean, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I used to believe that if I didn't get a meal of meat in within an hour of training, that I would wither away and like a fart in the wind, just fly away, because I would be so deflated. So
yeah,
it kind of takes a leap of faith, like, hey, I'm going to lower my protein and see what happens. And if you can take that leap of faith, I believe you will be rewarded.
Yeah. The ignorance of youth, man, is a real thing. I used to think the same thing. I got to get my protein shake in, steak in, something within like that anabolic window, 30 minutes. But we talked about this on the first Jesus Diet episode, that if you're eating a high carbohydrate diet, it's virtually impossible to lose muscle unless you just stop working out, because carbohydrates are very muscle sparing. And we have plenty of studies to show this. If your muscles are full of glycogen, you ain't going to lose muscle mass unless you just stop using your muscles. So it's like, just keep training as normal and see how your body does after a few days of very like low fat, low protein, high carbs, as the Jesus Diet protocol shows, and see how you feel first, see how your body looks. And slowly you can prove to yourself, you can sort of deprogram yourself from this programming from society that high protein is super, super necessary. But let's get back to the video here, because now he's going to talk about the whole idea of calories being maybe the thing that actually is what produces strength and muscle mass in the human body, more so than protein, at least.
probably wondering, if protein doesn't matter as much as we thought, then what does? Well, let's take a look at a few clues. In one study, researchers had one group of people double their protein intake to about 140 grams a day, while another group stayed at 70. The catch? Neither group trained. And after 8 weeks, guess what happened? Nothing. No muscle, no strength, no gains, just more expensive pee. On the flip side, another study looked at patients with kidney issues who were forced into extremely low protein diets, less than 50 grams a day. Now, you'd expect that would completely shut down muscle growth. But when half of them started lifting weights, even on that tiny amount of protein, their muscles still got over 20% bigger and 30% stronger. But what about your diet? What if I told you eating this bowl of rice could get you the same muscle growth as eating all this extra protein? Well, in one experiment, researchers split lifters into 3 groups. All of them followed the same lifting program. Group A got nothing extra, just their normal diet. Group B added a 2,000 calorie shake made mostly of carbs. And Group C added a similar 2,000 calorie shake, but with 82 grams of protein mixed into it. After the 8 weeks, both shake groups gained significantly more weight and muscle than the control group who didn't get extra calories. But here's the kicker. The carb group experienced similar gains as the extra protein group, suggesting it was the extra calories, not the protein, driving the gains. And we see the same thing in the opposite direction. In fat loss studies, people who train hard and eat plenty of protein can still build muscle if they're at maintenance calories or in just a very small deficit. But once that deficit gets too steep, around 500 to 700 calories per day, most people start losing muscle, even with a high protein diet. So you put all these studies together, and the most important drivers of growth becomes quite obvious. Number 1, hard training. Number 2, eating enough calories to fuel your training and recovery. And unless you're severely restricting it, protein actually comes in for support at number 3. In fact, there's even some cases where protein can actually start hurting your growth rather than helping it. For one, protein is arguably the most filling food you can eat, and it also burns the most calories to digest. If you struggle to gain weight, this can make it harder to eat enough to grow. Not to mention the GI discomfort and flatulence that can come from higher protein diets. You're not going to like it, and neither will the people around you. Second, it's expensive. Let's say your body only needs about 100 grams of protein a day, but you decide to push it up to 200. That extra 100 grams isn't giving you any additional muscle. Your body just burns it for energy. Now, if that extra protein is coming from chicken, that's about $5 added to your grocery bill every single day. But if you replace those calories with carbs, like potatoes, you get the same amount of energy for less than $1. That's a difference of around $120 a month, or nearly $1,500 a year. And third, when protein takes up too many of your calories, it pushes out carbs and fats. Too low fat can mess your hormones, whereas too low carbs drains your glycogen, tanking your workout performance.
So that's some pretty explosive revelations from the latest peer-reviewed scientific data. And I think it can give us some serious encouragement to trust this whole new protocol that we do not need to have huge amounts of protein every day to be optimally healthy. And in fact, we probably will be optimally healthy having moderate to low protein every day for all the reasons we've aforementioned. And so this is just like yet another reason why the human being does not need to murder animals and eat the flesh of dead creatures to live. Whether you don't agree with the spiritual ethics, I don't know how you couldn't, but even if you don't, throw that in the trash can and just look at the biological nutritional arguments that this is not the way our human bodies thrive optimally. And again, I'll put my blood labs against anybody's in the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a remarkable video from Jeremy, and I'm so happy he released that. It's funny, you go into the comments and you have some people saying this is eye-opening and other people clinging so hard onto the protein religion. It really has become a religion.
Nice.
But Aaron, if you don't mind, I'd love to get into this other study because Jeremy didn't even get into the incredible longevity and health benefits of eating a low to moderate protein diet.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Nice.
Okay, so first we're going to look at the Adventist health studies. Now, Seventh-day Adventists are known as the most vegetarian Christian community in the United States. They actually really take your body as a temple seriously. And this is just a remarkable study for so many reasons. It's considered one of the most important, incredible nutrition studies ever conducted. So this is why it's important. It was a rare controlled experiment. The Seventh-day Adventist community is uniquely suited for nutrition research because Members share similar values and lifestyles, like not smoking, minimal alcohol, regular exercise, family focus. The main variable that differs among them is diet. Some eat meat, but many are vegetarian or vegan. So, this allows researchers to isolate dietary effects with far fewer confounding factors than in the general population. In other
Wow.
words, it's one of the only large scale human studies where you can fairly compare vegetarians to non vegetarians in a consistent setting. Now, the other thing is the massive sample size and long term follow up. There were almost 100,000 participants from across the US and Canada, and they were tracked for decades with detailed health,
Wow.
diet, and mortality records. Okay. So, the scope of this study are really unparalleled. They also broke it up into diverse subgroups like vegan, lacto-ovo vegetarian, pescatarian, semi-vegetarian, and so on and so forth. So across the decades, the cohorts have shown lower risk of heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and obesity, lower rates of some cancers, lower inflammation markers, and significantly longer lifespans of the vegetarians. It was 10 years. A Seventh day Adventist man lives 10 years longer than the average Californian man. So, populations eating plant based, moderate protein diets show notable longevity advantages. Okay, 12% lower risk of death from all causes compared to meat eaters. Pescatarians had really good mortality statistics, and so did lacto-ovo vegetarians. But these Seventh day Adventists tend to eat a low protein vegetarian diet.
That's an
But
amazing study, man.
oh, it's so amazing. But even you'll love this. So, the next thing I wanted to share is blue zone diets. Now, these are the regions of the world where people are known to live the longest and be the healthiest into old age. And you will find in all of these blue zones that the populations eat low protein diets.
So
Okay, so blue zone populations get 9 to 13% of their total calories from protein versus 20% to, up to what would you say a bodybuilding diet is? What percentage protein, Aaron?
So you said they get 9 to what percent of protein, calories from
Not
protein?
13%. So they're very
So
low.
that's even lower than the Jesus diet. We've been telling
Yeah.
people as a general rule, and this isn't a hard rule, this is just our general guideline, is a 60-20-20 split, right? 60%
Yeah.
carbs, 20% protein, 20% fat. And you can still lower the protein more than that if you want, because clearly
Yeah.
the healthiest people on earth are eating actually almost twice as less protein as that, right?
Yeah. And I think I think they're wrong here about the average Western diet. I think people are eating way more protein, especially in the fitness community, which we're so, familiar with.
Oh yeah, it's
But
like 50% at least in the fitness community.
yeah, but this was so interesting because they break it down by region. So these are the healthiest regions of the world. Okinawa, Japan, about 9% of calories from protein, sources soy, tofu, miso, sweet potatoes, vegetables. And they keep the animal protein minimal. There's many vegetarians in all of these regions, but there's also many people who eat meat or fish, but they do it way differently than Americans. They eat it once a week or twice a week. It's not stuffing your face with bacon 3 times a day. So
Mm,
minimal animal protein. Acaria Greece, around 12% protein. They eat legumes,
wow.
chickpeas, lentils, black eyed peas, wild greens. They eat some fish, and they'll eat lamb and sheep on holidays or maybe once a week. Same with Sardinia, Italy, very similar. Sheep, fish, or goat meat consumed occasionally. Costa Rica, 13% protein. They eat a lot of beans, corn, squash. You'll notice the reoccurring theme is beans. All of these communities eat a lot of beans, they walk a lot, and they have great family and community lives. And then we have this Seventh day Adventist community in California, low protein, beans, lentils, soy, nuts, high proportion of vegans and vegetarians. So the common dietary patterns are beans are the foundation. Meat averages less than 2 ounces per day if they do eat meats. Dairy and eggs are used by many but are limited. They don't eat them constantly, and they eat a lot of vegetables and fruits. So, um, as you said, Aaron, here are the health impacts of this low to moderate protein: lower longevity hormones like IGF-1, reduced kidney and liver strain compared to high protein diets, improved metabolic health, less inflammation, better gut health, better cardiovascular health, better longevity. So that's my little presentation.
Yeah, thanks for putting that together, man. That's just an amazing overview. Talk about just shattering your paradigm of everything you thought was true about protein intake and all of this. And I think another reason here to touch on, James, why we really need less than 20% of our calories to come from protein for optimal health is because the body can easily make protein out of amino acids. And what is chock full of amino acids? Fruit. I want to show you guys a fruitarian health influencer on Instagram that we follow who has been a strict frugivore, according to what he says, for 16 years. And he explains routinely to people how he's able to keep a great, healthy, muscular physique, even though he doesn't eat any protein, essentially, any protein, because he gets all the protein, the building blocks for protein in his fruit. And as we touched on in the second episode, I think, even if you eat a big fat steak or chicken breast, your body has to break down all the protein in it, take it apart into amino acids, and then rebuild it into protein again for what it needs. And so it's like you can just cut through the middleman, right? Bypass that whole deconstruction process and just give your body the building blocks, the amino acids. So check out what this guy says about this in his Instagram post. Here's how I build muscle on a fruit-based diet. Firstly, I do not eat animals. I am vegan for ethical reasons. I'm not even for the health benefits. To be healthy, I eat a fruit-based diet. 99% of my calories over the last 16 years have come from fruit. But as you know, fruit is not considered a protein source. So how do I build muscle without protein? Well, fruit does have amino acids, and my body uses those amino acids to make its own protein. Turns out as long as you eat enough calories from fruit, you will be getting enough amino acids. That's how nature created it, as we said. And because I don't starve myself, I get enough calories to build muscle. But eating food does not build muscle. To build muscle, you must train properly and recover properly, which is why I work out every other day in the gym. So let's see what this guy looks like. Doesn't look like he's having any trouble building muscle to me, James.
Yeah. There's so many examples of this, of just absolutely ridiculously shredded fruitarians or vegans. There's a lot of these calisthenics guys who are vegans, and they're like ridiculous. This guy Goku Pump. There's a whole crew in New York City of just like the craziest physiques I've ever seen, and they
Yeah,
haven't
they're
eaten meat
amazing.
in years. And they have a glow to them. They just look healthier than these guys who are eating a
Yes.
lot of meat and on steroids. Yeah, these guys can get big and muscular and be chiseled, but there's the skin is healthier. There's a whole different glow and aura to the plant-based guys.
That's what I was just going to say is not only is he extremely lean and well muscled and all of that, but look at his skin health. His skin looks amazing. It's glowing. It's clean, acne free. And so many of the carnivore guys have these really patchy, inflamed red spots, acne on their skin. Their skin health doesn't look great, even if they're lean and have muscle mass. So why would you not want to have the best of both worlds, right? You can look young, have great skin, and be well muscled and lean. And it's like, what guy wouldn't want to look like that?
Because what's the point of having all these muscles if you can't live life in an effective way and live a long
Oh
time?
man, so many bodybuilders. It's kind of a famous thing in the bodybuilding world. You know, they've got all this muscle mass, but like they slip a disc when they bend over to tie their shoe, or they throw their back out walking down the stairs because they're so kyphotic and inflamed, and they have so much calcification happening in their body. The fascia is getting stiffer and stiffer, right? There's no flexibility, no range of motion because eating meat ages you. It makes your body more stiff and kyphotic, like a dead corpse, right? When you see a dead animal, it gets really stiff, and then you eat that meat from that animal that's all stiffened up. So that's going to produce the same effect in your body at a very minuscule level, of course. like unperceptible at first. But over time, as every day, meat, I noticed this for myself. I was way less flexible before I gave up meat. And now I have all this range of motion and youthfulness back. And so James and I actually gave ourselves a new fitness challenge, which is the 5-4-3 challenge. We want to hit a 500 deadlift, 400 squat, and 300 bench press, and do that with single digit body fats while being able to do handstand walks and bar muscle ups and functional things. And so we're going to, when we reach those goals, I would imagine we'll probably hit that by next summer. We're going to do a whole fitness vlog for you guys, showing us hitting all those numbers at single digit body fat, like doing it all on camera, no performance enhancing drugs, no flesh consumption for 3+ years. And this is all in the way of proving to people that it's safe to give up animal murder and flesh consumption, and your spirituality will benefit by far the most of any domain in your life, right? More so than the physical benefits, more so than the psychological benefits. The spiritual benefits, I promise you, are the most notable. But in conjunction with that, you do get a whole bunch of mental benefits, cognitive enhancement, oh my goodness, clarity of mind, clarity of thought, and the physical benefits of young, healthy, youthful skin, slowing down your aging, all these great things we mentioned. So I think we have put that myth to rest for today, James. But I'll pitch it to you if there's anything else you want to say before we close the pod today.
Yeah, everyone keep sending in these testimonials of your progress. It's so incredible to see the wonderful results everyone's getting. And remember, we're going to have the winner of the Jesus Diet Challenge on the podcast. Whoever loses the most weight, who has the best transformation, we're going to have you on and we're going to talk all about your journey. So yeah, if you're not in the contest or transformation yet, come on in. You're welcome to join. And let's all evolve together. Like, this is a beautiful journey we're on, and we're super grateful for everyone who is participating.
Yeah, man. Well said. We're all walking the journey together. That's why we put the challenge together, because there was such an enormous response from you guys in response to the Jesus diet that we unveiled a few months ago. And we've been tracking the progress in the Jesus Way Circle, as we said, but even within a couple of weeks, 1 or 2 weeks of announcing the Jesus diet protocol, we had people in the comments being like, I lost 12 pounds in the last 2 weeks. I lost 7 pounds this week. Just doing the things we mentioned. We were like, man, we got to get this weight loss challenge started because people are already losing tons of weight. So yeah, we are so excited to see y'all's transformations over these last 40 days. I think November 2nd is technically the day that the challenge will end. And so we're going to bring on not only the number one weight loss winner in terms of percentage of body fat lost, but we're going to actually bring on the male and the female. So 2 different categories. There's going to be a male and a female winner. Second and third place, we'll get some organic muscle swag and a Jesus Way podcast t-shirt. And we're going to have some conversations with you guys personally to tell us about your journey and how this diet has not only changed your life from a physical health standpoint, but mentally and spiritually as well. Because as we say here, we are all about embodiment. We don't need any more religion, any more dogmas, any more creeds. We want to live this stuff. And one of the first ways we live it is by representing the Creator in our health through wholeness, abundance of health, life, and longevity. That is the nature of God, right? And we express that nature of God, wholeness, health, through our bodies when we are healthy. And then that becomes the foundation upon which we build our spiritual house and destiny in this life. The healthier we are, the farther, the faster, and the longer we can run this race, right? And that's what we're concerned with here in terms of the Jesus Way podcast. So as always, guys, get out there, love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, and we'll see y'all on the next episode of the Jesus Way podcast. Peace and love.